Thank you very much. Hi.
Hi,
Did you see the movie?
I did.
Good.
When are you going to retire?
Any day now. um, it was very emotional seeing it here because this theater means a lot to me. I remember the dedication speech when...
Hold your microphone up.
That's my husband, Tom Curdy, up there, who I think would like to join us up here, and I think can be helpful.
Tom?
Tom, yeah,
Yeah,
he's a
sure.
producer. Tom, come up too, and you can tell me that. But I remember very well when this theater opened and Sybil gave a wonderful speech out in the patio there and saying she grew up in a town in the Welsh Valleys where there was a theater and she saw a new play every week and she wanted that for Sag Harbor. And almost everyone in this movie has acted or spoken on this stage. There's only one, I think, was not on the stage. And I've forgotten who it was. But Zoe Caldwell did a Saturday talk here about her life in the theater. She never did a play. And they've all been here. And Joe Mantello's directed here a lot. And it was just very special. I like the movie. I've seen it about 6 times, and I liked it more tonight than I ever have. And I think one of the reasons is seeing it at Bay Street, because it's such a special room to me. Glad to be here.
Something tonight in the movie kept striking me. I kept thinking about it too, and it was that your confidence. I know you talked about confidence in the movie and a sort of lack of confidence and everything, but you seem to have a confidence of who you are right from the beginning. And there was, it didn't seem to equivocate at all. It didn't seem to fade in terms of who you were, what you did, what you talked about, what you wrote about, who you were as a man, who you were as an are as a man, who you are as an artist. How did you come by that? Do you have any extra?
I wish I felt all that when it was happening. I didn't feel, my part in this film was, I think, 2 interviews that filmmakers did with me, which were in the past 2 years. So I may be more that way now. When I was living my life, I did not feel all that then. It wasn't until I remember very specifically a cold, rainy day, going up 8th Avenue, and I looked over and there was the marquee for Mothers and Sons, and I took it in that I have done what I wanted to do. And I said it with pride. I felt it with pride and confidence, I think I told you. And I'd never felt that before. I always was a very nervous working in the theater. I loved it, but I was nervous. It's hard to describe why it took so long to feel I belonged here, that I'd earned the right, and because it meant so much to me, and it's so, I think, tied in with having, I had a complicated relationship with my parents. A lot of us did. But I had parents who would come to New York and leave the program for Death of a Salesman or Streetcar out on the coffee table because it meant something to them. So I always knew theater was special. And then I saw a movie of, what's it, On the Town. Not a very good movie, but there were these sailors singing and dancing. And I thought, there have to be more gay men than me. I'm going to New York. So I knew at about 14 or 13, I was going to live in New York. And I probably liked the theater more than, it was so easy to say I was going to be a journalist because I won a lot of awards as a high school student and was offered a lot of scholarships as a journalist student. And I felt I was kind of betraying what they'd given me a scholarship for if I didn't become a journalist. But it's true, my very first night in New York, I said to my roommate, let's go see My Fair Lady. And he said, I want to write a letter to my girlfriend. And I said, God, he's going to be dull. And it's a huge photo he had of her. So I got on the subway and went down. And so I said the movie, and the guy said, if you come back at midnight and get in line, You could see it tomorrow, but you have to stay in line. So I went and saw Gwen Verdon and Damn Yankees instead, then got in the line. And that was New York in 1956. But I think I betrayed on my very first night on Morningside Hearts where I wanted to be. And that was in the Broadway area. But it took me, if I hadn't written the Columbia Varsity Show, I don't know if I would have been a playwright. I was really embarrassed when people laughed at the jokes in it. And the Varsity Show is meant to be funny. But, I was Phi Beta Kappa and, really bright guy and, did seminars on King Lear and all this. And I thought people laughing at that's anyone can do that. It took me a while to fall in love with the theater, I guess. And working at Actors Studio was a great experience. I mean, this movie sort of allowed me the luxury of looking back at my life again. I just turned 80 about 2 weeks ago. And I was a stage manager at Actors Studio for a production of The Trojan Women. Kazan directed it. Everybody was in it, from Geraldine Page to Kim Stanley to Jane Fonda. And I'm doing all this, and I'm like 19 years old. Then he says, do you want to go around the world with John Steinbeck? That doesn't happen to many people, And I really got to appreciate it now. First, I would never have maybe... I had dinner with the Steinbecks, and both boys looked older than me, which was awkward since I was supposed to be the tutor and the authority figure. They said, well, dinner was nice. Let's try a weekend in the country. So I got on a train, and they met me at Bridgehampton and drove me out to the little point out here. I'm sure most of you know where John and Elaine's cottage was. And that's how I met the Hamptons, and they were very different then. And that letter, one of the nice things about this movie, too, I'm not answering your question, I know that. but because we didn't see all the credits, because they go on forever, that letter from John Steinbeck, someone said, did John ever write you a letter? Yeah, he wrote me letters. They're all in my archives at the University of Texas, and these filmmakers found it. I didn't know it existed, really. And it's read by Brian.
Bryan Cranston.
Cranston read it. Mrs. McElroy, who changed my life probably more than anyone. That letter is read by Meryl Streep. These filmmakers really did their work to make it. So Mrs. Mac, we're very flattered to know she was played by Meryl Streep. So,
I'll bet.
And I'm still nervous about a lot of things.
Well, beside all the nervousness and the lack of confidence, perhaps at certain times, and the uncertainty, and so on, but there was a sureness in who you were, and who you were as a gay man, as an artist, and a man that seemed unshakable. And for instance, a lot of people would deny their sexuality or deny who they were in one way or another. You never seemed to do that. I think it was Rita Moreno, wasn't it, that said, remarked that about you?
I'm a 55-year-old gay man, and throughout our relationship, we've been together 17 plus years now, about once a year, I'll say to Terrence, all right, now explain this to me. You were having sex with peers in high school. You came to New York and you were out. Your first play had out characters. You were never in. And literally a generation later, and I don't know anyone my age who didn't have some period where they were closeted or had to navigate professionally whether they were out or not. It's thrilling to see what the next generations are. I have a nephew who came out in high school at 14, but I've not met anyone who has ever been so secure in one aspect of his personhood as Terrence. And so I always say, whatever the challenges of your upbringing, your parents did something very, very right because you're a truth teller. And I fundamentally believe that. I mean, to write, as Robbie Bates in the play says, to write a play of spiritual sustenance like Corpus Christi that when Corpus Christi opened, it kind of disappointed everyone. It disappointed the left and the gay community because people wanted it to be more irreverent, and the sort of right wing wanted it to be more irreverent too, so they had something to rail against. But in fact, it was a play that said, I want to see myself in this story. I want to be a part of the oldest story ever told. And I think every human being deserves to be seen in this story that the human race has been telling over and over and over again for some sort of moral guidance. And over the course of the 90s in particular, religion was used as a club against the LGBTQ community, with which we were beaten, and we were shoved out of any conversation about spirituality. Corpus Christi was ahead of its time because Terence was telling a certain truth that I think all people have some sort of hunger for some form of spirituality, not necessarily religion, but they want to see themselves in the stories that are constantly told. And I've said to Terence over time, you had to know that these protests were going to happen. You had to understand that you were going to enrage the Christian right. And I'm an attorney and I assess credibility, and after 20 years, I have to tell you, I think he genuinely didn't get it, that people just would go nuts at this notion because that was his truth. And I really think it's thrilling that the world has caught up with it. I mean, Corpus Christi is most often performed in churches now. And that's a radical shift in our culture.
I've never felt I was a provocateur as a writer. That was never my goal. My very first play, Things That Go Bump in the Night, during previews, you could tell the violent response. One night, someone in the audience pulled Eileen Heckert, who's the star, off the stage. It wasn't a very high stage, at the Plymouth of the Royale, and dragged her down to his level and said, Miss Heckert, I worship you as an actress. To see you defiling yourself, speaking this filth and garbage. Then Robert Drivers jumped off the stage and started fighting with him. And it was like the world premiere in the 19th century of, Hernani and Victor Hugo and the riots. And I loved reading about it in college. In real life, I hated it. No, just listen to my play, you know. I didn't like all the drama around it. But I didn't think when I wrote it, oh, this is going to upset people. And Manhattan Theater Club, we announced the play. No one expected any of this until it was erroneous, bad reporting, fake news, as our president would call it. But literally someone told them that the play featured nudity, lots of actual sex taking place between men, Jesus Christ and his apostles. That was never in the play. So it was a lose-lose situation, because when the play appeared, it had none of that. Well, obviously, I bowed to the pressure and cut all this. So it was an unhappy experience. I was so glad when they revived it a few years ago, and I felt people could just see the play. It's one of my favorite things I've ever written. Joe Mantello's production of it was so beautiful, done with 2 benches. And that's my favorite kind of theater, a bare stage and not a lot of fancy scenery, good actors and hopefully good words. So it's an important play, but maybe to what Tom and you were both saying, I went to Catholic school about 50% of the time. I was taught I was created in God's image. Well, that's why I am this way. And I think that's a very important message. So I never felt like a sinner. I thought they didn't get the message. Read the fucking Bible, and it's what the Bible says. You know, you are divine in yourself. And they've twisted it into something no, we are going to define who's good and who's bad. And I just didn't have that hang up. Plus, I knew all these dancing sailors were waiting for me in New York. My life crisis was getting out of Corpus Christi. That's all I had to do. The rest would be. But if I hadn't endured Corpus Christi, I wouldn't have met Mrs. McElroy. And my parents would have taken me to the theater maybe too much, and it wouldn't have been nothing special. So that when they did take me twice, I saw Annie Get Your Gun and The King and I. So it'd be 8 years old and 10 years old and see Annie Get Your Gun or Gertrude Lawrence and The King and I. Of course you want to be working the theater. It's magical. So Corpus, there's a reason everything happens in life. And I've been working on a play about Diaghilev, who grew up, the great Russian impresario, and he's saying the advantages of growing up in the sticks, because you have to dream in your head. Then you go to the big city and start to realize those dreams. But he thinks, if I grew up in St. Petersburg, I'd be at the ballet or the opera every night, or the theater, and I'd be audience. I had to make my own theater. And boy, I really lived in my head a lot in Corpus Christi. And the other thing is, Mrs. McElroy, who had us write a lot, I wrote a story that began with a woman toying with the maraschino cherry in her gin martini. And I got my short story back, F. I said, F, you always give me, what's going on? She said, your first sentence made me sick to my stomach. I said, what? She said, have you ever had a gin martini? I said, of course not, I'm 16. She said, it made me sick to my stomach, the thought of a cherry in a gin martini. Write what you know about. I said, that's good advice. So get out of Corpus Christi, write what you know about, and those are pretty good passports to get you in. I learned, and to come to New York for the first time, and I came at a great time, certainly. 17 is a wonderful age, I think, probably to come to New York, though. Friends like Wendy grew up going to the theater all her life, and she saw, South Pacific and Death of a Salesman and all these plays, because she was a New Yorker. So part of me always was a little jealous of that, but it meant a lot to, I'll never forget when I finally got here, and it was a great time. But, oh.
Well, they're not knowing or being able to predict or thinking about the response that there would be to a play like Corpus Christi when it was first done seems completely in part with you, because it seems like you were never overly concerned with the response that you were going to get. Of course, you like success, we all like that. But you did the work, and you did it as you wanted to do it, as you felt you had to do it, as you found your way to do it. So it's all of a piece. Yeah. You're a courageous person.
But I didn't think of it that way. You make me sound more courageous and heroic than I think I probably was, but I really didn't know any other.
Well, how afraid were you?
I didn't know. I wasn't. I just met people right away. It's so complicated to talk about. My freshman advisor at Columbia called me in during freshman week, and he said, I've looked at your transcripts from this high school you went to in this Corpus Christi. He said it was such contempt. He said, I doubt you're going to make it through the first semester here. So I really liked him. But then I thought, years later, that's called tough love. But literally, one of the first times I went to a gay bar, there he was. Our eyes met, and we never acknowledged that. The 4 years he was my advisor, we never said, I saw you at Julius's, and you saw me, and you fled. And that was, I thought, the shame and I mean, I hated that when I saw that happening to so many of my gay friends, that they let become something shameful. And AIDS just brought it all to a head. And people suddenly are dying of cancer, or their parents are finding out their children are dead and they didn't even know anything about their lives. It was a horrible time, and it seemed if I had any mission, it was be out, not marriage. I really fought hard for that, and Tom was a great ally and partner in that, and we made that much difference in the marriage movement.
And Edie Windsor's wife is right here.
Yeah, we're very proud of that. But being out, I thought, was the main thing that was important. People get the closet killed more people than AIDS ever did. I'll put it that way. Killed their souls.
And I should say, just on a very personal level, while there is great security in this truth-telling, Terrence has never written for a cause, but he's never considered how other people would respond to that truth-telling. He's also terrified during the process. I mean, Wendy talked about how tortured he is when he's writing, and I'll tell you, I usually read the first draft of a new work, and he'll email it to me and hide in another room, and just it's hard to watch how painful it is for him, and he's not worried about the substance or that it's going to the content of the work is going to upset people, but he's worried that he has done as well as he can do, and that's torturous for him. So there's this great security on the one hand, and this profound tortured insecurity on the other. And it's been, I have a lot more, we have these before and after pictures of when we first met and me now, and Terrence jokes that he's aged me. It's like being married to him is like the presidency, you know, it's, I have gray hair, I have less hair, I have lines on my face, but we joke, but it's been the greatest privilege to...
We do have 2 pictures on our refrigerator door, and people say, I say, when do you think they were taken? People say, what, 4 years apart? I said, no, 6 months. Tom, literally, since he met me, he did lose a lot of hair and it got much grayer. Real fast. It's stabilized now after 17, 18 years. But, well, you're an actor. You know, we're a handful most of the time.
Oh, yeah,
so
no question.
Thank God there are people who put up with us and still come see the shows we put on, and I still get excited when things begin. Every new play, no matter where it is. We just saw The Music Man in Florida, and I was so excited when the overture began. The Music Man, I've seen it 100 times, but I was and I think that's sort of human nature to be excited by theater. We just got to get young people into the seats so they know about it at an early age.
I guess what it is about you, Terrence, is that you somehow got in touch with yourself at a very early time in your life, very early age, and you never let it go. You held on with a fist of iron, as it were.
Or it won't let me go. And I do think, you can't thank people like a Mrs. McElroy enough. Teachers
are
for so important. I think how many people are not exposed to someone who says, you're different, or let me help you find out who you are. You know that great Oscar Wilde quote, be yourself, everybody else is taken. That is so profound, but it takes people lifetimes to stop trying to be like their neighbors or who they think are more successful or happier. And I was lucky. I think I was lucky. If I got, it was a gift maybe. I don't know, because I cringe when watching this movie when my brother talks about my father hitting me. I cringe, but it's true. But I'm here, and that's part of who I am. It didn't cripple me. It didn't scar me. Maybe it should have. I don't know. And I realized how much I probably provoked him, because he wanted to have a son who was like everybody else. And my brother's I always thought he's my stupid little brother. He was observing everything going on in that house. You know, my mother, when she'd come up here to the Hamptons, I could have 80, 100 gay people over. Oh, darling, come in, come in. She was Annie Mame. I go home to visit her in Texas. This is my son, he's a writer. He used to write for the Caller Times. That's the local newspaper at Corpus Christi. Broadway and anything that didn't exist. And she would forget my current partners. We didn't have husbands and name. You know, and this is a friend, George, oh, Tom, like, you know, and became a totally different person. So to see all this in a movie is also weird, and but I guess that's my life. But I always sort of knew it was my life, and you sort of live it with fun, and you know, nothing ventured, nothing gained. There's a thing tonight that really caught me. I learned a lot from John and Elaine Steinbeck. Is this theater still called the Elaine Steinbeck?
Yes, I think so.
We
Yeah.
named it for Elaine. They really enjoyed the best things that men and women do. They appreciated like that appetite for life, and I learned a lot from them. John was like a schoolboy all his life. He read. You know, people think he wrote about poor people in the Dust Bowl. He cared about medieval. He was a great medieval scholar, and he's just a fascinating man. And he wrote one book that took place in Sag Harbor, only one. Everything else is West Coast. And I knew him late in his life, obviously, the last 10 years of his life. But that's the kind of writer I wanted to be. When we would be in small villages, and word would get out, the American great writer, John Steinbeck was here, and people would come forward with the family copy of Grapes of Wrath, and they would be worn and stained and wrinkled, and you know that generations had read the book, and they were deeply moved to meet the man. They'd read the book in Italian or French or Spanish to meet him. And I thought, that's the kind of writer I want to be, that people say to you, thank you. You recognized who I am. And I think my favorite, I promise I'll shut up, story ever was the play of mine. There was an excerpt from Andre's mother. One night, Tom and I were in Philadelphia trying out another play of mine, and we came out at the stage door, and a woman said, "Mr. McNally, can I speak to you a moment?" And I said, "Yes." "My husband and I have a gay son and gay daughter, and when we found out they were gay, we asked them to please pack and be out of the house by morning. And we watched your show a few years later. Andre's mother was on, and we looked at each other and said, we've got to call them." And they called their son in Chicago, and their daughter wherever she was, and they're a family, and she introduced us to her son and her daughter. And that is as great a reward I think an artist can expect, that you touched someone and got them to do something in their life instead of saying, "Oh, that's the best show, I never laughed so hard, and it was a great afternoon, a lot of fun, where are we going to eat?" That gives me such pleasure, and the power of art, too.
And as a family, they came to the opening night of Mothers and Sons, with the daughter with her wife and the son with a boyfriend.
Well, that's a good story. When people say, can art change anything? And people say, oh, no, it never changed anything.
It does. But
obviously it does.
if it's one person, it's worth it. Of course you want. I mean, I don't get changed by everything I say, but you've been in shows, you know, and you really are reaching that audience. It's so important, and it's a fight worth fighting every day of your life as long as you can. And the buildings like this are so important, and I want to see them increasing, not decreasing. And just, you know, John Steinbeck, I remember when he won the Nobel Prize, there was a lot of criticism that he wasn't a great writer, in the sense his style didn't influence it. Hemingway influenced the way I wrote when I was in high school. Oh, I want to be Hemingway. It was a good day. It was a bright day, you know, those bright, short, pithy sentences. And John was very, very hurt by that. And I felt badly for him. And at times, I thought it was wrong of them to do that. But I just said to him, John, you reach people. No one has ever gone up to Ernest Hemingway and said, you broke my heart, you got my story, you know, and you should be so proud of what you've done. But he's a human being, and to win a great prize and be told, well, maybe that's where I think all artists' insecurity come. I mean, in one of those clips, they say the winner or the best play is, and all I'm looking at is sitting right behind me, right here, is August Wilson. And I look at his face when they say the winner is Terrence McNally. And I think, that was a pretty damn good play he wrote that year. Is Masterclass really better than his play? Why did Masterclass win? And what is it, guitars, 7 guitars? Is that the title of it? Yeah. Not win. And so, you know, we're not artists, we're human beings. And we have our little petty things and our fears and insecurities. I feel really lucky. Turning 80 is a big event. I won't pretend it's not. It is my third act, and I'm really want to write myself the best one I can, because I feel I've been sort of told where to show up for the past 60 years. You know, you got rehearsal, you got auditions, you got previews, you got, you know, on a schedule. Right now, I have really one play we're going to revive, I know.
Which one?
He's going to produce.
Can't say.
Can't tell you. But it's really exciting cast. Yeah. And I'm revising the play I wrote this spring about Diaghilev and the Ballet Russe, which I didn't quite get right, and a theater in Texas wants to do it. And I'm very excited about the chance to work on it again. Whether I have the energy to do a new play in the current New York City Broadway climate, I don't know. That's a very steep mountain right now. So we'll see. The revival, I feel, it's a good play, I think, and these actors are ideal for their cast, and with a little luck, I think we'll be able to announce it pretty soon. But it's interesting to say, I don't have to do anything. Maybe I just want to read a book, walk on the beach, you know, get another dog. We had that dog for 17 years, and you know, they're a lot of work. You can't be in rehearsal and have a puppy. So I have a lot of options, and one is staying healthy too. I am dealing with an ongoing situation, and I'm very fortunate that places like Sloan Kettering exist, and for 17 years I've been living with this thing and done a lot of good work with it, so it hasn't affected me yet. But yes, it's affected me. It hasn't prevented me. When I don't work, it's more my fault than anybody else's. So I'm figuring things out, I guess. What I want the third act to be. What? Why do you? Tell them the Austin story. I was talking in a theater in the Round, and he's pulling at my jacket. This was right after the 80th birthday. They had me, and suddenly I'm this great honorary Texan. You know, where do they see this movie? And Tom's pulling at my sleeve. I said, "What?" He said, "You're scratching your ass," and there's people sitting there. So every time he does that now, I think I'm scratching my ass. But all right, because when we did Masterclass before New York, we did it at the Mark Taper in Los Angeles, and it's sort of in the Round. You know, it's like this, even fuller. And so Cole said, "I hate acting in the Round like this." She said, "There's no place to get away from the audience. I can't even scratch myself. There's someone looking at me. For the proscenium, I can turn away for a second." And that irrelevant note, I will.
Should, okay, should we? Yeah, okay, so we're, take some questions. If anybody has any.
Can I say something?
Yeah?
Up here. I have a lot of it. I just want to say, and I'm sure I speak for everybody here, if you haven't heard thank you enough, I say thank you for everybody here.
Thank you.
We should wrap it on that. Want to wrap it on that? Yeah.
Okay, I think that's the last word. Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you, Terrence.
Thank you. Thanks for doing this.
Sure, my pleasure.
Thank you.